March 1945, Cologne was barely a city anymore. One of Germany's oldest and most historic urban centers, home to the great Gothic cathedral, Roman ruins, and nearly 1 million people before the war, had been reduced to a wasteland of broken stone and ash. Beginning in May 1942, British bombers had targeted Cologne in a sustained campaign that, over 3 years of Anglo-American bombing, reduced urban Germany to rubble. By 1945, roughly 95% of Cologne's city center had been destroyed. Those who remained, the elderly, women, children, and those who had nowhere else to go, lived in cellars beneath gutted buildings, surviving on meager rations, breathing the dust of collapsed streets. The last days before the Americans arrived. As the U.S. First Army advanced toward the Rhine in late February and early March 1945, the city descended into a kind of panic theater. Nazi offices became scenes of feverish activity as files and documents were burned to prevent incriminating evidence from falling into the hands of the Americans. Distinctive brown and gold uniforms, trimmed with swastika armbands, were hastily tossed out of windows to lie in the streets and alleys. Nazi banners, parade regalia, and the obligatory, oversized photographs of the Führer, found in all official buildings, were hastily buried or burned by nervous inhabitants. The Bible of the Nazi Party, Mein Kampf, was purged from residences and shop windows. Overnight, the city's Nazi loyalists tried to erase 12 years of devotion. As the war historian noted with grim irony, there were no Nazis in Cologne. The Allies were to find only innocent victims. Meanwhile, the Cologne citizens cowering in cellars met the noise of approaching battle with a mixture of fear and relief. Relief that the battle would soon end, dampened by memories of Nazi propaganda warning of Allied plans to deport Germans for slave labor. But most survivors in the rubble were convinced that life couldn't get any worse. They had arrived at a point where they believed an end with terror is preferable to terror without end. During the night of March 3, Allied aircraft dropped propaganda leaflets over the city, telling its citizens to disobey the directives of the Nazi leadership and assuring them they had nothing to fear from the advancing troops. The fall of Cologne, March 6, 1945. The Allied columns approached Cologne from 3 directions: the 3rd Armored Division from the northwest, the 104th Infantry Division from the west, and the 9th Armored Division clearing sections south of the city. On March 6, the American columns moved out of their positions toward the heart of the city. The battle was fierce but brief. When the firing stopped, U.S. soldiers walked through streets of total devastation. The famous Cologne Cathedral, miraculously, still stood, its twin spires rising above the surrounding rubble like something from another world. The children and the burning, the filmed moment. In the days and weeks following the fall of Cologne, the U.S. Army's Signal Corps filmed the occupation as it unfolded. One of the most striking and historically significant sequences they captured was of German children, young boys and girls, burning portraits of Adolf Hitler, Nazi flags, and other symbols of the regime they had grown up under. The National Archives' description of the Signal Corps footage records. CU's close-ups, children burning Hitler's picture, Nazi flags, etc. Captured in the same reel that documented German prisoners being escorted, a new German police force being established under American military government supervision, and civilians placing MG police armbands on their sleeves. Historical records confirm German school children burning Nazi books and paraphernalia following the end of World War II in Cologne, Germany, circa 1945 to 1948. This was not a spontaneous, joyful liberation seen in the Hollywood sense. These were children who had been raised entirely within the Nazi system, who had been in the Hitler Youth or the League of German Girls, who had sung Nazi songs in school, who had known no other world. Now, in the rubble of everything they had been told was great and permanent, they were burning its symbols. The act was a mixture of genuine relief, practical self-preservation, being seen to cooperate with occupiers, and something more instinctive, a recognition that the man whose portrait had hung in every classroom, every government building, every home, had led them to this. The American military government takes over. Alongside the footage of the burning, the The Signal Corps also filmed the establishment of a new German police force under American military government supervision, with a German police chief receiving orders from a U.S. Army captain, and signs posted reading, "Looting is forbidden," in German and English. The U.S. Army quickly set up a military government, MG, to administer the city, one of the first large German cities to fall under American control. It would become a template for what would follow across the rest of the country. Denazification, the wider context. The burning of Hitler's portrait by children was one small human moment within the enormous, systematic process the Allies called denazification. Denazification was an Allied initiative to rid German and Austrian society, culture, press, economy, judiciary, and politics of the Nazi ideology. It was carried out by removing those who had been Nazi Party or SS members from positions of power, by disbanding organizations associated with Nazism, and by trying prominent Nazis for war crimes at Nuremberg. The United States military pursued denazification in a zealous and bureaucratic fashion, especially during the first months of the occupation. 5 categories were established for all Germans: major offenders, lesser offenders, followers, and exonerated persons. Denazification also included compulsory visits to nearby concentration camps, posters displaying images of dead prisoners hung in public places, and forcing German prisoners of war to view films documenting Nazi atrocities. What the moment means. The filmed image of children burning Hitler's portrait in the rubble of Cologne in 1945 endures as one of the most quietly powerful images of the war's end. It captures the strange, uncomfortable truth of post-war Germany, that those burning the symbols were often the same people, or the children of the same people, who had cheered for them not long before. For the children themselves, it was also the beginning of something. Growing up amid the ruins of a destroyed ideology, in a physically shattered city, they would go on to become the generation that rebuilt Germany, and that asked, with increasing urgency in the decades ahead, how it had all happened, and what their parents had done. The cathedral stood. The city was rebuilt. And the ashes of Hitler's portrait blew away in the March wind off the Rhine.